Expecto Podcasto! No, that is so stupid and awful. We clearly need something better than that to introduce the episode.
ASIO Harry Potter special.
Do you really say ASIO?
Stand in the toilet and flush. This is our Harry Potter special. I'm Bryce Diener, and I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
And I'm Sam, oh, you may not think I'm pretty, Tyler. Stand in the toilet and flush.
No, that's how you get to the Ministry of Magic.
Oh, yes.
Or you can use the visitor's entrance, which is a telephone booth.
Yeah.
But that's less fun. Stand in a telephone booth and make a phone call. It's our Harry Potter special.
Surely that could only exist in the magical wizarding world of Harry Potter.
Telephones, you say? Gadzooks.
A payphone? What's this?
What's special, even more about this episode, is that we actually have a guest. Someone decided to actually sit down with us. So welcome back, Pastor Jim Terwilliger, a.k.a. PJ.
Yep, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
So as is a Harry Potter special, I think it's only right that we do a Harry Potter-themed question. Have you guys been sorted into houses yet?
I live in a ranch. It was built in the 70s.
No stairs. It's really good for my needs.
I did take the Pottermore quiz and it said, "Congratulations, you're in Hufflepuff." And I said, well...
Thanks for participating. You're in Hufflepuff.
Time to delete this account and start anew. So that's what I did. In my defense, I answered the questions like, I want to get in Gryffindor. I want to know what Gryffindors would answer. And that's how I ended up in Hufflepuff. And so I took it again, answered it as my true self, and I ended up in Gryffindor. And I've been there ever since.
Mm-hmm. Sure you did. PJ, have you been sorted?
I have. I actually did a similar thing.
Yes.
Trying to get into Gryffindor. And I made it on my first try.
Oh!
I guess with a note of irony, I did it honestly and ended up in Slytherin. At least I was honest about it, guys. Come on.
I think I was honest. I was trying to remember. I'm pretty sure it was Gryffindor. Did I? Or did I not? Fudge the details. If I'm honest with myself, I probably did.
For that quiz, the opening question should be, do you care if you end up in Gryffindor or not? That would save everybody a lot of trouble, a lot of heartache.
They had to do a study of the number of people who canceled their account after getting not getting into Gryffindor.
That would be a great number. This will be, I'm sure, a discussion full of spoilers. So if you have been in a coma for 20 years or so and would
welcome
like to
back.
Yes. But we'll be doing spoilers, I'm sure. So if you care about whether or not Harry Potter lives to the end of the book, please stop listening to it now. How were you introduced to the world of Harry Potter?
Hearing about it in the news, like the midnight releases of the book and people going, this is when I was in Kentucky.
Burning the books.
But that came next. Actually, I have that sense of, you're not supposed to read these.
Right.
Yeah.
Gave me a little interest. And I've always been interested in kind of that fantasy realm anyway.
So, we're in PJ's office, and there is probably more Tolkien stuff in here than in all of New Zealand.
And that's saying a lot.
Did you read them after the flap about, hey, Christians shouldn't read Harry Potter?
Yeah, I read
them. Or did you start
after
before? That. After, okay. Did that spark your interest more?
With the whole flap, I was kind of like the position of, I can't say much about these until I read them. That was probably at least part of the role in my reading them. But once I got into them, I think I was interested in them, very interested in them as well. It was definitely a thing, especially teaching in a Christian school, because within the school, there are some different perspectives, well, in the Christian community as a whole. And a lot of them, not well-founded necessarily from reading it, but more from hearsay. There's some that say, why would I need to read it to know that it's bad? But I'm not sure this qualified in that same vein. I don't remember the initial reaction, my initial thoughts, because it's probably been 20 years since I read it. Probably not quite that long. I met students in youth group and in school, parents taking different sides, kids reading them, reading them secretly without their parents knowing.
Oh, more on that when I get to my story.
Yeah.
How about you, Bryce? How did you get introduced to Harry Potter?
So I was a senior in college. It was my last semester. The very last movie was coming out.
You had nothing else going on whatsoever.
Yeah. Honestly, that was the best semester of my life. I never studied. I made Dean's List. I took
a little note here. All you students out there listening, don't fall.
The final movie was coming out, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, and I thought, I've just been following what everyone else has told me that these are bad. And so I looked at the preview. Oh, this kind of looks interesting. So what I did was I found the first movie. I decided to start watching it. And so I watched the first movie, loved it. Watched the other movies, loved them. Downloaded the audiobooks by Jim Dale, who is the narrator at the time. I loved those. This was all in the last semester. It took me 7 days to watch all the movies. Then I downloaded the audiobooks. It took me 4 days to listen to all of them. And then I went back. I was like, I wonder what the movies missed. So I went back and watched all the movies again in 3 days.
So the books were really an incidental extra for you, weren't they? Like the actual books.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
interesting.
I think so.
Have you actually read the books?
A few years later, I'm listening to the audiobooks 3 or 4 times a year at this point. I would finish the Deathly Hallows and just start immediately
This is
again.
actually an intervention.
I feel like I'm not worthy to be on this episode.
Wait till he says what his favorite book is. You'll feel better about yourself in a second. Don't worry.
And so I was like, I finally, I need to actually get some hard copies. So I went and bought one of those nice chest sets, all the books together in just one little fancy cardboard box. And so then I just read through all of those.
So in 3 weeks, you watched all the movies once, listened to all the books, watched all the movies again.
Exactly, yeah.
That's impressive.
And then made Dean's List.
So question for you. Well, that was on the campus what was the feeling on campus? Was it ever talked about at a college? I mean, my experience was in a Christian grade school. What was the experience?
Yeah, that's a good question.
On the college campus?
Yeah, so I went to a Christian university, Indiana Wesleyan University. In terms of Christian colleges, they're more liberal-minded. You get a Bob Jones who's very conservative.
Sure.
I doubt Harry Potter's allowed even still on Bob Jones University. But I'm sure you're listening. and watching and reading Bob Jonesers.
Because that's what they call themselves.
We're Jonesing right now, guys.
They will now.
I'm a Bob Jones student, yeah. By the end of my freshman year, I made all the friends I was ever going to make. 5 friends, that's good enough. Okay. And so become my roommates, shut the door. I don't need to meet anybody else. And so they weren't really into Harry Potter.
Sure.
And so I never really talked about it with them. I got into it by myself, a light in the darkness.
When you got into it hard.
I did.
You came home from college and it was just Harry Potter.
And it has been ever since.
Do you still read it every year?
I've cut it down to once a year at least, no longer 3 or 4 times a year. So, Sam, how did you get into it? I think it was more of a Slytherin way, a sneaky way.
Oh, it is applicable to my house, although it still took great courage. I was probably about 10 or 11, and I was in a toy store, and my parents just dropped me off, and I saw a copy of Harry Potter, and I thought, oh, there's that book I'm not allowed to read. Let's do the next step and read it. So I just sat down, I started reading Sorcerer's Stone, and read the first couple chapters. I thought, oh, this is pretty good. I'm enjoying this. This is a fun book. At some point or another, I think I told my parents I started reading it, and they thought, well, if you're going to read it, I guess have your dad read it with you then.
Well, so he read it with you.
Yeah, he read it
neat.
to me. And I have to say, to this day, his Hagrid voice is always in my head. Whenever I read the book.
So he actually
awesome.
he did
voices. He did
good.
voices.
Cool.
Oh yes, that's definitely a part of my experience too. Is the very first book he read to me, and then they were like, you know what, this is fine. Just go ahead and read them all. We very quickly got through the is it good or is it bad, because I was just going to read them anyway.
Sure.
But,
Well, I like that model of parents reading it with kids. I think that's so important with a lot of areas of our culture today. That's where parents need to come alongside kids in anything. Not just the things they read, but the things they watch, the things they listen to. Parents need to come alongside. Little parenting tip here. Parents need to come alongside their kids and be part of the world and enter into this with them and have conversations with them about it. And for a parent to say, I'm just not interested in that. It's like, no, but you're interested in your kid.
Right.
And your kid's interested in that, therefore you should be interested in that.
Oh, yeah.
So parents need to be involved with that. That's really awesome.
You talking about your dad, I think that's so important as for any parents who are listening to, when you are sitting down with the kid, come up with those voices. It doesn't matter that you don't sound like Jim Dale, the narrator for the audiobooks. It doesn't matter that you aren't like Alistair Stevens when he does some voices in Dear Mr. Potter. You are creating this voice for that kid, and it gets stuck in their head. And reading along with the kid and making that come alive to them brings the story alive to them more.
It's more real and exciting, and it just also builds up that relationship. I mean, what parent wouldn't want their kid speaking to them when they read that book 20 years later?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Just to build that relationship.
And let's face it, we can all do a Dobby voice. Let's be honest. It's easy. There's no excuse. No excuse. read one, read another. And I think one reason that I enjoyed Harry Potter so much was I was already a big fan of mythology, folklore, and fantasy. So reading these books, it was just sort of a good symbiosis. Yeah, exactly. Like I was getting references like, oh, three-headed dog. Oh, look at that. That's from Greek mythology. Or, that kind of thing was really fun for me just to pull those things together. In some ways, I'm a fan of Harry Potter more because I'm a fan of all these other things.
Okay.
And that kind of led into it for me. Absolutely. I like the books more because of that.
And I think what's neat about that too is like this might be the first introduction that someone has to fantasy.
Yeah.
And it's from Harry Potter that they will get into Tolkien or they'll get into Lewis. Whereas like for you guys, you were saying you got into Tolkien first, you got into Lewis first, and then because of that you got into Harry Potter.
Harry Potter is also I think in a lot of ways a person's introduction to actually reading a thick book. A lot of people that didn't pick up a book this thick, Harry Potter really raised the bar for what is allowed to be given to a child to read, just in terms of not in terms of daring stuff in the books, though they are quite daring with the content sometimes. Just the fact that they're that large and that's important.
Yeah, if you can get a 10 or 11-year-old to read a 300-page book and stay committed, that says a lot.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's a good thing for them.
Or a 22-year-old.
Or 22-year-old in some cases, yes.
Well, I think, too, if you can get somebody to read a book that thick, it's not a challenge anymore, and they can go, I read something this big, I can read something even bigger now, and keeps growing and growing, and hopefully the love of reading grows out of that, too.
I mean, I definitely have a love of reading, but there's sometimes where I'm getting bogged down in nonfiction, and so I just need to read a fiction book, even if it's long, just kind of kickstart my reading.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I try to do a fiction book, a nonfiction book, and then another fiction book. That keeps things fresh and interesting. Because if I read like 3 fiction books in a while, I really kind of get jonesing for something, Bob Jonesing, for something a little bit more hard, a little bit more interesting, a little bit more practical, I suppose. Yeah. But then if I just read nonfiction books over and over again, I get really bored.
I
get bogged down. Yeah.
When you were first reading them, was there ever a time when you read them like you're waiting for that next book to come out?
Oh, I was a part of Pottermania.
So you were part of that. That's what I was wondering.
Oh, completely. I read the first 3 without having to wait, but then I had to wait for Goblet of Fire to come out. This was back when the internet really had more than just Wikipedia, so there were lots of fan sites all over the place for Harry Potter, lots of theorizing, like MuggleNet. They had a whole bunch of, what's going to happen in the next book, and a whole bunch of articles of people's theories about what's going on, and that was so much fun to be able to look at that and be able to think, okay, that could happen because this happened previously in the books, and I bet this is going to be picked up and put in the next ones. It's really a shame you missed out on that, Bryce. It was a lot of fun.
But I remember some of that. I wasn't into them at that point, but that would be exciting. Just that whole
like standing in line for 3 hours for the midnight showing.
Yeah. Well, they're talking about what do you think is going to happen, and talking about all the clues that have been left.
Probably one of the best theories, probably the most popular one, was one of the books, I think it was the 5th one, was supposed to be called Harry Potter and the Green Flame. And there was like this whole thing, like I think people actually wrote Harry Potter and the Green Flame. There was a very active fan fiction community. And I mean, like, the world that she made has enough blank spaces, there's room for people to play with. And not to mention the sources she drew inspiration from, too, are certainly vital enough to draw more and more inspiration. I mean, they're making new movies out of the Harry Potter now anyway, and there's always more room in there.
Well, I was going to say, I finally have my ability to, like, get excited for...
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Because Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them was coming out. And so I think I really enjoyed it that way. I've seen previews for the new one.
I enjoyed the first Fantastic Beasts movie. I'm looking forward to the second one.
Yeah.
And one thing, it's just, she built this world, created this world, and now there's, like you said, there's so many gaps that can be filled in.
Right.
And one interesting thing with these is they don't have that, what did they leave out of the book? Thing going on.
Yes, that's true.
It's just the movie by itself.
Right.
But she's still involved with them, so...
Yeah, she's writing them. I do wonder, because they're movies, are they a part of the book canon, or are they part of the movie canon? Because those are 2 very different timelines.
That's true.
Well,
how different are they?
Well, there are characters that don't exist in the movies and certain things that are given to other people to say. So that there's a different in canon on what actually exists.
Are you talking about in Fantastic Beasts? Because that was more of a reference book.
In Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, we don't really have direct connections to the movies as opposed to the books. So I wonder which canon are those movies a part of? Are they a part of book canon or movie canon? Because those are 2 a bit different. I'm not
sure if they're decidedly different. It's been a while. I've never really looked at it too much.
It just makes me wonder if we can expect bits and pieces from the books that didn't make it into the movie to filter in that part of history. It just makes me wonder.
That would be interesting.
For the most part, in the movies, the stuff that's left out is the deep lore, the big history, the background, and so on, which is what you hope these movies would capitalize on and really draw into and draw out.
They should have done the extended editions.
Oh, yeah.
Like Lord of the Rings.
They're coming out later.
Right. Like all the
some of them could have.
All the extended editions of Lord of the Rings usually added in a lot of that lore that they considered the average fan wouldn't be interested in. So that's a good point. Maybe, especially with Rowling involved, she can bring out some of that lore that she loved.
There are a lot more songs in the Harry Potter than the movies would lead you to believe. A lot more songs.
That's absolutely true.
I will say, I have heard of the proposed idea that they should make Harry Potter into a television show, and each chapter is its own episode.
My absolute wanted prequel is Young Mad-Eye Moody in the 60s. I think that would be amazing. Oh, and they're still calling him Mad-Eye Moody because he's a lazy eye or something.
I think he doesn't have his magical eye yet.
But I think that would be just be awesome, just to see young Aurors in swinging Beatlemania 60s London, just chasing down dark magic. I think that would be awesome.
And that's our intro.
Well, this being the Harry Potter Special Book Reports podcast, we are going to each review and discuss our favorite Harry Potter book. Oddly enough, we'll also be discussing a couple of our least favorite ones because that's another person's favorite, which should make for a fun discussion, I'm sure. Do you want to go first? We can get all the venom out now? Or
The book I chose for this episode was Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince by J.K. Rowling.
Don't worry, folks. We'll tell him why he's wrong, but we're going to give him a chance to talk about the book first.
So the reason I love this book more than anything else in the world, I will agree with you, there's so much to not like about it. The things that I like about it in it outweigh it so much more.
Interesting. What are the things that you like about it?
Over the entire series, as we get introduced to Ginny and her obsession with Harry, this is the pivotal point where they finally come together. They become a couple in this book. So that was huge for me because if you realize that's the only possible way that the trio gets to stay together over time, with Ron and Hermione marrying each other. Harry is left out of the picture. If Harry marries Hermione like a lot of people wanted, Ron gets left out of the picture. By Harry marrying Ginny, and at the end of Deathly Hallows we get that, and Ron marrying Hermione, they're all brothers and sisters. And everything.
You're such a romantic at heart.
It is.
You should have seen how excited he got over the royal wedding. My goodness.
Honestly,
this is not a joke, actually. This is real.
I did stay up all night just to watch it at 5 a.m.
My goodness.
Oh, he was so
Learning new
excited.
things.
Like, every time I saw him, he had some new bit of news about the wedding. It was really, funny.
That was my Harry Potter era. So having a British royal family getting married.
What else do you like about it? Is there anything more, or is it just that overwhelming sense of joy about getting that plot continued?
Well, let me tell you what doesn't happen in this book. Sirius Black didn't die. Dobby didn't die. Dumbledore is alive for 90% of it. 90%.
At least, probably a little more.
If you don't read the last 3 chapters, he's alive for all of it.
For me, this book had the least interesting of the interesting things in Harry Potter.
Okay.
Like what,
First
for
off,
example?
how dare you? Secondly, explain yourself.
Yeah.
Well, each book, I always enjoy the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. I think it's very interesting that each one is so different and has a different light to shed on such an interesting subject at the school, the different ways that they have their downfall at the end of each book. I think Snape, as Defense Against the Dark Art teacher, because we already know him and already know his character fairly well, I don't think he was as interesting to me as meeting a brand new character. Admittedly, we have a substitute in Slughorn, but he is also the least interesting, I think.
I will say he is very,
Yes.
this doughy, very dull, one-dimensional character, Slughorn. He's just the fill-in. I would agree with that.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of getting
I
us
get
to the
that
next
feel.
part of the story. And maybe that's intentional because she wants to move the reader away from that part of the story and more getting them into what's going on.
That's true. I think this is a book that she kind of wanted you to fall out of love with Hogwarts.
Right.
That Hogwarts is such a central bit of the book that how could we not just continue loving Hogwarts?
But I think you definitely need this book in place and all the bad things that happen in this book in order to lead to Deathly Hallows, where more bad things happen, but at the end, they get so much better.
It feels like a lot of this book is just a setup
Yeah,
for what's
I
going to
agree with
happen.
that.
This is the ugly duckling that leads to the beautiful swan.
Deathly Hallows is many things, but I don't know as I can honestly say it's a beautiful swan.
How dare you.
I gotta say, I don't know. I don't know. But another thing I didn't like about this book, let me continue with this.
Let me tell you more how you're wrong.
I think that each book has an overarching conspiracy against Harry Potter or against the school or something like that, or a mystery to be uncovered. That one has the least interesting and the most easily resolved one in the whole series. Draco Malfoy brings a piece of furniture to Hogwarts. I mean, that is basically the big thing that's going on.
Right.
And it feels like at any time they could have resolved that so easily, but she couldn't allow that to happen in the plotting. To me, that was so clunky and so hard to be able to move on. You've got, the Philosopher's Stone is at Hogwarts and it's being guarded by a 3-headed dog, and there is a basilisk that's using the pipes in Hogwarts to be able to find its victims, and then we have what happens.
Draco has an armoire.
And at any time, Harry Potter could have easily solved the problem. Just go to Dumbledore. Here's what's going on. I'm pretty sure there's something really awful that's happening. It's nicely covered up by the cool adventures he goes on with Dumbledore, which are the best things in that book.
Absolutely.
I was going to say that is one of the things, because I think it is the book before this where Dumbledore ignores him the whole year.
Yeah.
Because he's afraid that Voldemort is going to...
But is there anything else that you like? Like what?
I do have a excerpt.
Oh, please do.
Oh, wow.
And so, just to give you an idea of where this is in the book, it's in the middle. And so, if you have the same soft cover version of the Scholastic Harry Potter book that I have, turn to page 403. So, to give you an idea of what happened, Draco has given this cursed locket to Katie Bell. They're talking about it in the hospital wing at this point. And also, Ron was poisoned later. And so Harry gives him the Bezoar that he learned from the Half-Blood Prince's book. And so Ron is in the hospital. Everyone's there. His parents have already been there. And so before anyone could respond to this ominous pronouncement talking about the locket, the dormitory doors opened again, and Mr. and Mrs. Weasley hurried up the ward. They had done no more than satisfy themselves that Ron would be making a full recovery on their last visit to the ward. Now Mrs. Weasley seized hold of Harry and hugged him very tightly. Dumbledore's told us how you saved him with the Bezoar, she sobbed. Oh, Harry, what could we say? You saved Ginny, you saved Arthur, now you saved Ron. Don't be... I didn't, muttered Harry awkwardly. Half our family does seem to owe you their lives. Now that I stop to think about it, Mr. Weasley said in a constricted voice. Well, all I can say is that it was a very lucky day for the Weasleys when Ron decided to sit in your compartment on the Hogwarts Express, Harry. I love that because it brings it back to the very beginning of the book where they first meet. You get that like dirty-faced Ron Weasley, very young guy, and he just happens to meet Harry Potter, and it's come full circle. Like, look at all the Weasleys Harry Potter has saved. For the Weasley family, it's, whenever a Weasley's in trouble, good thing Harry's there.
That's the real reason they took him along to go to the Quidditch World Tournament. That's why.
And so this is one of those little bright moments in a very dark book that I liked. Is that, it's Mr. Weasley realizing what an incredible guy has done for them personally. Not only has he killed Voldemort, like the first time when he was a baby and become this famous kid, but he's also someone who has saved them personally. And I think that's just oh yeah, Mr. Weasley, that's very, choke back the tears sort of thing.
That's interesting. The Weasley parents, anyway, are always a delight to see on the page. They are just the best friend's mom, just perfectly done. The best friend's dad, perfectly done, who just adopting Harry.
Now, I do want to... But over time, we get this idea that the Weasleys are pureblood. But they don't have that snooze, that mentality of, I'm better than you. And so I'm wondering, where was it in their family line that they changed their mindset? That we can be these kind of kooky people that have this really weird house and, our kids play with the gnomes in the garden. And
it's an interesting question. Like, were most purebloods more like the Weasleys or more like, say, the Malfoys?
Yeah.
In the way that they reacted to muggles and...
Mudblood.
Yeah, mudblood.
I'm sorry, guys. It's okay to use that word as an example.
Yeah, so what was the default position for a pureblood in their approach to other people? Was it more like the Weasleys? Are those the two extremes? And probably most people fell in the middle somewhere.
Right.
With Great Britain being such a class-conscious society, the pureblood is often shown as being sort of an aristocratic kind of thing with the Malfoys. There's really just a general sense of the upper class versus the lower class. And the Weasleys are so working class, I almost wonder if it's more of an economic thing that pushed them down. Like, at what point did their fortunes fall? Like, did they used to be a wealthy family at some point? Because they're all pure blood?
Because we do get the idea from Ron, especially, like, there's hand-me-down. He gets Bill's wand.
Yeah.
And that's why he's not really good at magic. Because the wand chooses the wizard. Which, why would you want to get rid of a wand in the first place?
I wonder if Bill's was also a hand-me-down, and when he got old enough to be able to buy his own, he handed it down to Ron, maybe.
That would make sense.
Because those two brothers were doing pretty well.
I mean, the only reason you'd ever want to get rid of it is because you think you're getting something better.
Yeah.
And like when Ron came of age, he gets that really fancy watch, like the galactic watch that his uncle on his mother's side, I think, owned originally. And so that was a big deal for him. I think there definitely was maybe somewhere earlier in the Weasley line that either their fortunes fell or something that happened that they just became more of a down-to-earth people. I think they found their wealth in something other than monetary value. I think they found their wealth in...
Great lesson.
Exactly, yeah. Wealth in each other and in friendship and the discovery of knowledge. Like Mr. Weasley loves learning about Muggle things. That's how he'd rather spend his time versus Mr. Malfoy is a governor of the school and he's got all these ins and outs of the Ministry of Magic and that's how he makes his...
What does he do?
Wheeling and dealing.
Construction and union work, mostly, I'm pretty sure.
He's a garbage man.
What's interesting, like the whole Weasley family, I think it's a neat family model too for anybody to look at. It's
5 kids.
For that. And redheads.
And redheads, yes. I completely agree.
But they have there's
Wait, Bryce, you feel a kinship with a family of friendly redheads?
That's weird.
What's up with that?
Yes.
I don't know how I can relate.
It's like they're a good family. It shows how they care, but they're not a perfect family by any means either.
Right.
Mom and dad disagree. The kids aren't perfect. One of the kids in particular goes a little off the deep end, but it's just such a good model of family dynamics, I think. But it's a realistic one. She could have portrayed this family like perfect, and there's never any disagreements or any issues. There's issues within this family, but they have the most important things.
I think, too, one thing that helps in her portrayal of the Weasleys is the only people we can compare them to are the Dursleys. They have the appearance of perfection, good suburban life, good job, a reasonable amount of money, but there is no real care for each other. It's all about appearances.
You get Fred and George, who are like, they're just used to having explosions happen in their room.
Yes.
And the Weasley parents never really checked on them when they're actually making their Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. There we go.
We could have corrected you at any time, but we wanted to see you struggle through that, I think. That's what we were doing.
Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. And like, there's like, we just heard all these explosions in the room. We just thought they were just having fun with each other. It turns out they were inventing stuff. That's just so normal for the Burrow. It's like, there's explosions happening. It's just another Tuesday.
So what you're saying is they really weren't the helicopter parents.
Exactly.
Well, they have that
the
clock.
Dursleys were.
Yeah, if you have that
That's
clock
true, they
that
did have a
shows you when
clock.
somebody's in peril, you don't need to hover.
It's like the cell phones today where parents know where their kid is all the time.
That's exactly right. Wouldn't it be amazing if you had a text messaging service that just said your kid's in mortal peril? That would really be a good thing to have. That's
Someone is trying to create that right now.
So we get to the end. Harry Potter has been banned from the Quidditch team from what he had done to Draco Malfoy with his Sectum Sempra. So he's been in detention all day, copying old note cards for Snape, which he's going to be doing for the rest of the semester. Turns out it's the day of the final tournament, and he has no idea whether they won the House Cup or anything like that. So we get to the end. He walks in. Everyone's cheering. He's like, oh my gosh, we won. Harry looked around. There was Ginny running towards him. She had a hard, blazing look on her face, and she threw her arms around him. Without thinking, without planning, without worrying about the fact that 50 people were watching, Harry kissed her. After several long moments, or it might have been half an hour, or possibly several sunlit days, they broke apart. I mean, I think that is one of the big elements that I like. You get a little bit of romance, and you get a couple that you like both characters, and then they finally end up together, and you're like, yes. And it's neat. Like I said, it's a very dark book, and that's just one of the few lights that come up, and so it makes, I think it was Bob Ross who said, the bad moments make good moments that much better.
Then you got to beat the devil out of it.
Yeah, that's right. Just kind of paint a little happy tree.
Yeah, a little happy tree, beat the devil
and that's what they
out
are.
of it.
They're just happy little trees every now.
We strive to be.
It's interesting. You would definitely seem to enjoy this book for its emotional content.
Yeah.
And for the satisfying continuance of certain plot threads that you enjoyed quite a bit. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
I do think that we hated the same parts. I agree with you.
But your love of the other parts made up for it. Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
Interesting, because this is my least favorite book. It's one of the few I've only read one time. Yeah, I actually don't even own a copy of this one, because I don't intend to read it again.
That's interesting.
Yes, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7.
That is fascinating that you would not even own a copy of one part of the set.
Yeah, I just didn't pick it up. I just read Mary's copy.
Okay, so it's in the house, so.
There is a copy 12 feet away, but it's separated. It's in quarantine from the others.
That is what I did with Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
Really?
Yes. It is on a separate shelf on the other side of the room from my box set.
Not even Beetle the Bard could separate.
I would say that is my least favorite of the Harry Potter books.
Do you have a favorite yet, PJ?
My favorite is kind of a tie. For me, when you said that, hey, we're going to talk about our favorite book, for me, it was very easy to narrow it down to 2.
Out of 7.
And so after that, though, I've had a hard time ever since going back and forth. I can rule out 1 and 2 pretty easy. I mean, they're good getting going, but the rest of them I did liked all of them. But 3 and 5 really are 2 favorites. And I think it's because it's the characters in both.
So
Black, Lupin, Pettigrew are all introduced in 3. And then they're kind of left out of 4.
Completely, yeah.
Yeah, and then 5, they're developed. And really, those are some of my favorite characters. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think I like 3 and 5. I have a hard time deciding between those 2.
So that's Prisoner of Azkaban and The Order of the Phoenix?
Yes. Yeah, those are 2. Yeah.
Those are also my favorite 2. Yeah. I think those are my favorite 2 as well. I think Prisoner of Azkaban is my clear favorite, but second certainly is Order of the Phoenix. Those 2 are so great.
It was interesting. I did some research, and Prisoner of Azkaban actually is... every poll I saw, that was the number one book.
Yeah.
It's also the most unique of the 7, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's set, the plot of it is so much different.
There's nothing going on.
Right.
Literally, there's nothing going on. Yeah.
And so...
Which is still better than what was happening in Half-Blood Prince.
How dare Well, I think what's interesting is that's the only book of the 7 that Voldemort doesn't get mentioned.
Gets mentioned, doesn't appear.
Well, I mean, yeah, he doesn't
appear. Yeah.
And certainly the plot doesn't revolve around him.
Not at all. Yeah.
And so I like 3 because of the characters, but I like 5 because the characters I love in 3,
Yes.
they're not developed until you get to 5. You find out a little background. And one of the things I love about the Harry Potter series as a whole is the world building. Just this whole overall plot. In fact, as I read through, especially books 5 and 6, I couldn't stand Harry Potter himself. And like, I'm not interested I'm not interested in your love life.
Yeah,
I'm not interested in that part.
I agree with
in
that
all
completely.
honesty, I'm interested in the world building.
Yeah.
And 5 is where the world building really takes off. 4 sets it up very well.
I think 3 is the book. I think Prisoner of Azkaban. Because these two books are so similar in a lot of ways. I think 3 is the one where the world building really takes off.
Well, I was going to say, is that the one that we get introduced to Hogsmeade?
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And that's true.
I think the fact that they leave actively is what really opens it up. So that then allows book 4 to be able to open up further.
The thing I like about 5 also, the Order of the Phoenix, is the Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah.
You find out that there's this whole group that is against them. And I'm like, there's another Order of the Phoenix before this Order of the Phoenix? When is that book coming out? Where's the prequels? I need the prequels for this.
But I think that is another thing that's really good about both of those books is it isn't just about Harry, but it's about what's come before involving his parents.
Exactly.
And that is, in some cases, more interesting than what is currently going on.
Yes. Very much so.
Another thing that brings these two books to the forefront for me is they have, I think, the 2 best villains in all of Harry Potter in them. Because in Prisoner of Azkaban, you have Aunt Marge, and she is awful. I would stack her against Rita Skeeter any day. And then in book 5, we have probably the worst person ever to exist in Harry Potter. I mean, the best villain is Dolores Umbridge.
Yeah.
She is everybody's worst authority figure.
Stephen King has said that she is like the worst villain of like ever.
Even the people who like villains, I don't think are going to like her.
Yeah, there is no point in the book where we feel bad about anything that happens to Umbridge. She is awful.
And suddenly you like centaurs a lot more. Oh, they carried her off in the woods. I like centaurs.
One additional thing, getting back to which one's my favorite.
Yeah.
I thought back to when I first read them. And Order of the Phoenix is one of the few books in my life, and the only book of the Harry Potter series, where I pulled an all-nighter reading it.
Oh, really? That's high praise.
I finished at 5:30 in the morning.
My word.
Because I was just wanted to see what happened.
Right.
And then I finished at 5:30 in the morning, then I went to bed, I woke up the next day, and reread the last section again. Because,
sure you didn't.
Did it really happen?
That is good.
And just that end sequence, the end battle, I think is one of the classic battle scenes of the books.
I think it's the first battle scene where we really have effectively an army casting spells at each other.
Yeah, exactly.
And that becomes a little bit more average in the next 2 books, but that's the first time I think we really have, a good versus evil, more than just being Harry confronts somebody at the very end of the book.
Right.
I think that is a big, big change for the whole series.
You both kind of brought up this point, like you were talking about your favorites. You had mentioned Harry Potter isn't everyone's favorite. Who would you guys say out of the entire 7-book series is your favorite character?
Mine's easy. It's Mad-Eye Moody, hands down. Even if we don't actually meet him until book 5, I still love Mad-Eye Moody.
You love fake Mad-Eye Moody.
I think because Barty Crouch Jr. was able to fool Dumbledore and everybody else who'd met Mad-Eye Moody before, his portrayal of Mad-Eye Moody is who Mad-Eye Moody is. So I'm willing to say I love Mad-Eye Moody.
Sort of like Fred and George are easily switched around.
Yeah, my favorite character is Fred and George Weasley. That's the cheap answer.
You have to go that way.
No, it's definitely Mad-Eye Moody, though. I mean, like, he doesn't act any differently in Order of the Phoenix. He is still that exact same character. It's the same portrayal of the same point of view, the same methodology, and the same just wonderful, crazy vigilance. That I just love that character.
Sure. I really struggle with that. It's going to be a member of the Order of the Phoenix, for sure. And I'm really torn on Lupin and Black and Dumbledore. Dumbledore I really like, but sometimes there's that sense of Dumbledore, he's just too good at everything.
Right. I agree with that.
It's kind of like I love Gandalf, but he's too good at everything. Black, I love his carefree approach to life. Sometimes almost a little too carefree. But Lupin he's got that, but he's a little more stable in a sense.
Which is saying something considering his condition.
Yeah. And that sense of self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
Dumbledore's self-sacrifice, Harry Potter's self-sacrifice, but Lupin's self-sacrifice was more, I think, sacrificial, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He didn't come back in any form.
Right.
He's just gone, you know. And honestly, I wish, in some ways, I could have met Harry's father, James Potter, a little more.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Because what we know of him, he seems like he'd be a really cool guy. Plus, this is my grandfather's name is James Potter, too.
So yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that. Talked about this series and doing this story with us. You dropped the biggest bombshell on us that I think we've ever had.
It's all real.
Yes, tell us how you are related to James Potter.
James Potter, actually, my name, James, I'm named after James Potter, who was my grandfather on my mom's side. My mom was Terry Potter before she became Terwilliger. And they are actually from England. Came over in the early 1900s. James Potter, my grandfather, his brother was, I think he still had a brother or a cousin still living in England. And then my uncle, his brother is Harry Potter also.
So you are related to Harry Potter, you are related to James Potter.
Yes. Absolutely.
I think you're right, though. I think if I could get any other prequel besides my beloved Mad-Eye Moody in the 60s,
Sure.
I think seeing the Marauders at Hogwarts, or even better, a little bit into their young adult lives, I think that would be really cool to have. I think she wrote a short story about James and Sirius, didn't she?
When Pottermore first came out, there was a release of how Black got his motorcycle.
Okay.
And how he eventually gave that to Hagrid, and then you get that intro at the very beginning where Hagrid is riding Sirius Black's motorcycle. Okay. That's a nice little Easter egg we get there at the beginning. It's like, oh, I need to return this bike to Sirius. And so you get this name Sirius Black at the very first book.
Yeah.
And then you forget it by the time he actually becomes an important character.
She is very good. I can't look into her heart and say for sure she had that in mind when she wrote that. Right. But she is very good at picking up something that she mentioned previously and making it matter later on.
Yeah.
And she did say that you could figure out how book 7, you were to look at all the Easter eggs, that a lot of stuff was in there. I don't know how, I haven't gone back and read through them all.
I will say
I am dubious of that. Very dubious.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I'd never seen that before.
But going back to the question that I asked, that I want to answer myself. I will say, I think mine is Lupin.
Not Dobby?
I love Dobby. I cried when he died.
He's not kidding.
I didn't cry when Dumbledore died. But, I mean, there's something about Lupin just like, I think going back to the Weasley thing, it's like he's so down to earth, and he's accepted his lot in life. But at the same time, like he's willing to overcome that.
I think, too, in the context of the fact that these stories take place almost exclusively at a school, he's arguably the best teacher we see in the series.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If I were to model myself as a teacher after any one of them, Lupin would be
Mrs. Sprout.
Mrs. Sprout.
Mrs. Sprout.
Trelawney.
Trelawney.
But no, Lupin, as a teacher, I could say, oh, I want to be a teacher like Lupin.
Yeah.
Right.
He does a good job in class. He makes it interesting, but he also comes along and establishes a relationship with students outside of class.
Yeah.
Building into their lives.
Which is, again, astonishing considering his condition. I mean, the fact that he's willing to go out and meet people and talk to people while still being careful and being guarded is really an incredible balancing act for a teacher.
But I think his condition is probably part of what makes him a good teacher, too.
Yeah.
He recognizes the struggle, and it's very real for him.
Which is, I think, the reason why that's the book where they focus on magical creatures in Defense Against Dark Arts. I mean, arguably, that is basically a Care of Magical Creatures class that entire year.
Yeah.
But I think Lupin specifically chooses to have them look at dangerous creatures around them so that they're able to be prepared for the way that he wasn't able to be as a kid.
You said Lupin was your favorite. So in book 7.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, especially because at that point we get Teddy Lupin. Who is the
that's what I was wondering.
The child of him and Tonks, and thankfully kind of like gets adopted by the Harry Weasley clan towards the end of the book. But it's so hard because, especially book 7, she's just killing people off.
Yeah.
George has the ear missing. Fred dies. Both Tonks and Lupin are dead.
Mad-Eye Moody.
Who's given the worst death.
Worst death. At least we get to see his moment of death compared to Remus Lupin and Tonks, though. But I agree, Mad-Eye Moody should have had a much cooler death. At least give us 5 pages. At least 5 pages.
Now, refresh me. He was early in the book, right?
We see a flash of green while he's on a broomstick, and that's it.
It's when Harry finally becomes of age, and they're traveling.
There's 7 different groups.
The 7 Harrys,
Yeah.
We get to the burrow, and someone says, Mad-Eye Moody's dead. And that's it. Hedwig dies there, too.
I never liked that owl.
I wonder if, in some sense, some of her characters, she did not perceive they would be as liked as they were liked.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Like, if she'd known Mad-Eye Moody was going to be as well liked, she might have fleshed out, maybe not kept him alive, but fleshed out his
she
death
has
a little
admitted
more.
that she was willing to kill off Ron Weasley.
And maybe that's what came down to, not killing him off, but definitely breaking the trio there. The Trinity, if you will.
Yeah.
And
no, that's the right word to use. It's the right
to
word.
separate them, probably maybe that was a concession. I'm not going to kill him, but I am going to make it difficult.
Although that was so forced.
It was. I do feel it
did
was
not.
a little forced, yeah.
Every time she breaks up the main three, the power trio, as Alistair says on Dear Mr. Potter, we love you, Alistair. It always feels fake to me and kind of uncomfortable, and it kind of makes the book kind of stretch in a place that feel like the book shouldn't go to me. I never really liked those parts of the Harry Potter books.
It was pretty extended, especially in the 7th book.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's true for the 7th book in general.
It was pretty extended as a whole. There were times, hey, let's move on.
It is interesting. You look at the dynamic of trios in the book. Like, you get the main trio, Harry, Ron, Hermione. You get Draco with Crabbe and Goyle.
Ernie Macmillan and the Hufflepuff kids.
A great name for a band, by the way.
Ernie Macmillan and the Hufflepuff kids! They're a kazoo trio. At best. At best. Yeah, trios are all over the place, yeah.
And going back to, like, Peter Pettigrew is not part of them, but the Marauders.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
the Routers. Yeah.
Even though, like, Peter Pettigrew tries to
He's
join
the
them,
Longbottom.
there's definitely, there's definitely a power trio there.
Mm-hmm. Not so much on the side of evil, though, I suppose.
I think she likes to single out the idea of having an individual evil. Voldemort. You guys are doing that.
No, we're enjoying you doing it. Why would we bother taking it away from you?
Even though he has Pettigrew towards the end, it's more of a servant.
And Bellatrix.
He is by himself. Umbridge is by herself.
That's true. Community is such a major theme in family. I guess it would make sense for evil to be lacking that.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
I think she wants to make it look like it's not appealing. Like it's very lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, getting back to favorite books, I know your favorite book is book 3, but you never fully express why.
Oh, gosh. Compared to Bryce's book, where I see it as having the worst of the cool stuff, I think book 3 has the best of all the cool stuff.
Every sentence is, let me snake Bryce's book, and then continue my thought.
Compared to Bryce's terrible book, I think that... I think Remus Lupin is the best Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Mm-hmm. I think that this book has the most interesting plot, if not conspiracy against Harry, in that it's got so many interesting elements that combine together. I think the fact that it opens up Harry's past and the Wizarding World is really wonderful. Hippogriffs are wonderful. I love that Hagrid gets to be the Care of Magical Creatures teacher. I think that is such a great progression for the character. It's just everything that's in this book, I think, is more interesting than the books that come before it and more lighthearted than the ones that come after it. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's those two textures together that make this book the best of the whole series. Not to mention, too, I think that this is the only book where the Marauders map helps the plot instead of getting in the way. A big change in the series.
Well, I was going to say, I think that's one of the big things I really liked about the whole Harry Potter series was the Marauders map and just like cool like little dots with names walking around and all that stuff.
I think, too, this is also the last book where Quidditch really matters. You know? Like, I think this is the most Harry Potter book. It's the last book where Quidditch matters because it's canceled for the Triwizard Tournament. And the 5th book... I don't know, Quidditch just doesn't seem to matter as much compared to the Order of the Phoenix. Sure. 6th book, Harry Potter gets out of Quidditch, and 7th book, there is no Quidditch because we're not at Hogwarts anymore. Sure. I think this is the most Harry Potter of the Harry Potter books, easily. And I think that's one reason why it just sticks out to me so much as being my favorite. Mm-hmm. It also has probably some of the best exposition. Like, the whole scene in the Shrieking Shack is so well written. Mm-hmm. From every point of view, having that much information in a scene and that much emotion at the same time is really, really great writing, I think. And the whole thing with Patronuses, too. That is just
cool.
Great writing.
That was where they're introduced as book 3.
Yeah,
right?
Yep. And on the other side, Dementors. I think Dementors are probably one of the best creations of this whole universe. The whole idea of a creature that feeds on happy thoughts and just spreads depression around it. It's also, I think, the book where she does the best job of moving them from innocence to experience with the whole questioning the government and whether or not the government is right. That's very nicely handled in the book as well. Yep. Those are things I like about it. Now, do you guys subscribe to the theory that the books mirror each other, that 1 mirrors 7, 2 mirrors 6, and so on?
I never looked into that.
No, I've never really thought about that.
Oh, yeah, there are interesting parallels between the books, except for the 4th one, because there's no number that matches it. This is 3 and 5 over here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it is interesting. 3 and 5 definitely, I think, mirror each other.
And books 2 and 6 are much more about Slytherin people and Slytherin characters, and there's much more that's kind of a strong tone to it. They're also the weakest of the books in the series. And 1 and 7 is very much the opening and the ending. There are lots of parallels between those two books about the confrontation with Voldemort and that kind of thing as well.
I mean, if you have a 7-book series, you almost have to have a little bit of that mirroring, in a sense.
A little bit. There's a lot of very interesting points in the books where they really combine nicely when you look at that. It's a little too in line not for it to be intentional, I think. Are there any other points or thoughts or questions or anything like that?
Well, I wanted to bring up this whole aspect, being that we do have a pastor with us. The whole parallelism between Harry and Jesus. Mm-hmm. Someone has died for us. Someone has sacrificed themselves for us. They've come back from the dead, and they're willing to defeat evil.
the idea of a Christ figure is used in a lot of movies, used in books, in the sense of, someone being willing to self-sacrifice. And I don't know how true this is, but I've heard it said that one of the reasons Rowling would not say that there were Christian influences in her writing is because she didn't want to give away the ending. After the fact, if I understand correctly, and I don't remember sources or anything like that, she did say Christianity did influence her writing. Similar with Aslan dying. C.S. Lewis would say that he wasn't intentionally trying to tell the Christ story when he wrote Narnia. And a lot of people have disputed that over the years.
I find that very hard to believe.
Especially in the last book.
Well, I think he says about the Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe. I don't know if he says about the rest.
Okay, sure.
But he wasn't trying to retell the Christian story because the myth was so into him that it just naturally came out. The mythic element of this happening is so part of who we are that it just comes out naturally in your writing. But what he would always say is that the myth of someone dying and coming back to life is part of who we are, but it's only true in one particular myth. That's where the myth becomes reality, is within Christ.
Sort of like with Lord of the Rings, because there are so many things in the Harry Potter series that are very reminiscent of Lord of the Rings. Dimensions with the Ring Wraiths, the giant spiders in the forest with Shelob and all that. And
there's a wizard.
Yes. That's true.
And there's a wizard.
There is a wizard.
Thank you for contributing, Bryce. But she said she hadn't read Lord of the Rings by the time she started reading Harry Potter. Just sort of osmosis of it existing in the fantasy realm, I suppose, too. Whether or not she meant, though, for it to be a Christ figure, though, I don't know.
One thing you mentioned earlier was one of the reasons you like the Harry Potter series as a whole, I think, is because you like the fantasy realm.
Oh, yeah.
All the creatures.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know how much she was aware of that world, but there's definitely some archetypes throughout history that come through in all these writings. They're all from the 20th century, Lewis, Tolkien, and later Rowling. But they all, I think, part of their mythical background goes back for years.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Christianity is part of that mythical background.
And I think
not to say that Christianity is a myth. I would go again with Lewis, that the myth that is real in this particular case.
So we talked about your favorite and my least favorite.
Yes.
Do you guys have least favorite books as well? Let's really get angry and bitter.
Well, I had said Cursed Child.
Cursed Child, but of the 7. Like, let's...
Of the 7.
Yeah. Because, like, if we were to expand it out, I'd say Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is my favorite Harry Potter book. That's fantastic. It's in the title.
Sure. For me, I would say, like I think I said previously, books 1 or 2. Not because I didn't like them. It's just that, again, the world building is what I'm all about.
Right.
And 1 and 2 probably had the far least amount of world building. And maybe there was like world building, but not world development. Maybe that's the right way of saying it.
I was going to argue. I think book 1 has the most world building because it's introducing
the
whole
it's
thing.
introducing
But you're right. Not developing it. Yeah.
And I'm also very much part of it, probably like Lord of the Rings, into the lore behind things.
Right.
You see probably the least amount of lore in 1 and 2, which coincidentally they're the shortest books too.
That is a good point. Yeah. If only the Harry Potter books had appendices. That's what we're really wanting out of this.
Yes, exactly.
That's what we want.
Even though I still love it, Goblet of Fire is probably my last. You know, we get this whole idea of the tournament, so it takes away from the Quidditch aspect.
That is very true, yeah.
Every event, I'm just thinking, Harry'd be thrown into this tournament as the 4th champion. Yeah. What he should have done is at the beginning of every event, just say, oops, I quit. So that way, Cedric could have been the true champion.
Or fail on purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Just not even try, get disqualified.
Yeah. I mean, that's not the Harry Potter way. Thrown into something, he's going to give it his best shot. And that doesn't create a good book. It's Harry Potter and I gave up.
The Triwizard Tournament and the Quidditch World Cup at the beginning put a lot of pressure on the book. They kind of squeeze out the highlights of what the plot could be into being something else. I think the Triwizard Tournament makes absolutely no sense. Even more than Quidditch, which Quidditch does not make any sense at all. Sure, the snitch, 150 points. Sure, why not?
Yeah, I know.
And it's this whole idea, too, of, they got rid of it in the past because people died. It's like, what did you change?
That's a really good point.
And it didn't work out.
This year we decided death shouldn't be mandatory at the final celebration.
How do we make it safer? Dragons. Okay, what about the second one? Well, let's see if they can drown in the lake.
What were they doing before? That was too dangerous.
Thanks very much for joining us for this very, very Harry Potter special, PJ. Really glad you could come along.
Glad to be here. Been a great discussion. Appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Always good to be able to hear your insights. I think it's clear that you are somebody that we enjoy talking to. I want to thank all of our listeners who voted in our poll. Bryce decided to make a joke I made in our last episode, a reality, by putting up the Who's the Bigger Jerk, Sam or Bryce poll on Facebook. Want to give a big thanks to the 3 people who voted for Bryce and nobody who voted for me. Thank you very much. That means a lot.
And if you think you're going to get mentioned just because you voted, you're wrong.
Yeah, wouldn't dream of mentioning Paige, wouldn't dream of mentioning Ben, wouldn't dream of mentioning Ben.
Shane Diener. You think just because you're my brother you're going to get mentioned? Think again, pal.
Special thanks to my mom who refused to vote even when I asked her to. Thank you very much, Mom. But thank you very much to everybody who voted. Quite recently, I was fortunate enough to be able to do a guest spot on the Gameable Saturday Morning podcast with Chris Newton. Had a wonderful time talking about Samurai Jack. You can find both those episodes in the Gameable podcast feed. They have a Tumblr. They're also on iTunes. I'd recommend listening to them. It was a fun conversation. Very, very fun talking about how Samurai Jack can be used in role-playing games. It was a very...
And they use other shows and things like that, too, like in other episodes, right? Like, it's not just Samurai Jack.
Oh, it is now.
Okay.
Oh, no, they do a different Saturday morning cartoon each month. They've done a very wide variety of shows by now. They did He-Man. They've done Batman the Animated Series. They've done a whole bunch of really interesting shows. And before then, they did Pixar movies. And before that, they did Disney movies. So there's a very wide back catalog of stuff. Recommend their Toy Story coverage. They did a really good job on all 3 movies. Now, if you enjoyed listening to our podcast, please rate and review us on iTunes and SoundCloud. That's wonderful. We're also on YouTube. And if you would like to complain about my hatred of Half-Blood Prince or Bryce's love of it, feel free to come and tell us at bookreportspodcast@gmail.com. You can like us on Facebook as well. That's always wonderful. Feel free to pop your head in and say something. You can also find me at skullduggeryandthesmoke.blogspot.com. I'll be talking about Constantinople forever, it seems like. Getting closer, getting closer. Keep on going on that one. There's just so much to say.
I thought it was Istanbul.
Thanks very much. It's a Wingardium Leviosa from me, Sam Tyler.
I'm Bryce Leviosa Diener.
And I'm PJ.
Thanks very much for listening and hope that you've enjoyed our coverage of Harry Potter. I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the future.
ASIO Harry Potter special.
Do you really say ASIO?
That's how you say it.
Okay.
That's how Jim Dale says it.
I'm sure that's how he says it.
Do you want to hear an awful story?
That's what I said.
It's how Jim Dale's accent got me in trouble.
Please do.
So, what is the Phoenix's name? Tell me.
Fox.
Fox the Phoenix. He says Forks.
Oh.
Because he's British, and so he said Forks. He said Forks the Phoenix. And so, since the audiobook was the only thing I really knew, I thought it was Forks. I'm taking a hike through the woods one day, hiking behind this couple, and all of a sudden they're like, "What was the name of that phoenix in Harry Potter?" I'm like, "I know this! It's Forks!" I yell at them. I don't introduce myself. I just yell, "It's Forks!"
Forks.
And I walk away proudly. They must have thought, "What an idiot! That's not it at all."
Some weird man yelled about utensils at us when we were walking around.
Brother spoons.
And that's the danger of only listening to audiobooks, folks. You've heard it here. I think I've made the dangers clear before.